Hi there, thanks for joining me today. My name's Jo and I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator based in the UK. Today's my Monday mashup where I mix up some either some stamp set or some products or something just to bring everything together because we have such a wonderful selection of products. So this is the card that we're making today. I'm taking a rest from the Christmas. This is for actually for a dear friend of mine. We've been friends for 38 years now, and she's going through a really rotten bad time of it at the moment, and I just wanted to send her a little card just to say that I'm here for her. So I thought this was a really lovely sort of bright sort of set. So this is what we're using, and it's called All Things Fabulous, and the coordinating dies are the Fabulous Florals dies. So all of these have been die cut, so I didn't have to do any fussy cutting for these, although I love fussy cutting, so it's never a problem, but sometimes it is nice just to be able to get them done. We're also using our masks here. So if you're not familiar with the masks, they can be found on page 146 of the annual catalogue, and this is the one we're using. It's the one with the little spots on it. It's so versatile and it just looks lovely. So I talk about that a little bit more later on in the video, but they're worth having a look at for sure. So let's get started. So the bits and pieces we need today is our card base, which is our thick whisper white, and this is our full A4 length, which is 29.75 centimetres by 10.5 centimetres, and it's scored at 14.85 to give us our card base, and we're going to be using it in that format today. You're also going to need a piece of So Saffron cardstock, and that measures 9 centimetres by 13.35 centimetres, and a piece of whisper white which measures 8.5 centimetres by 12.85 centimetres. So we're going to pop that to one side to start with. What we need to do now is to mix up our base, which we're going to use one of our stencils. Now these are the Basic Pattern Decorative Masks. These can be found on page 146 of the annual catalogue. They sometimes get missed a little bit, but I use these quite a lot for things like scrapbooking and things like that. I rarely use them in cards, but I don't know why, because they're so versatile and they can give you some really good, lovely effects. So you can sponge through these with your inks, but what we're going to be doing today is to be using some of our Shimmery White Embossing Paste. Now this is really beautiful. It's so lovely for Christmas because of the glimmer that's in it. So if I open the pot, I don't know if you can really pick it up on the camera, but it has got a really nice shimmer to it. And I'm going to mix it up with just a drop or so of So Saffron re-inker. So this is just the re-inkers that we use for re-inking our ink pads. We're going to mix it with a little bit of the paste today. So the first thing I want to do is just to grab some paste. Now you don't need a great deal, so don't go mixing up loads and loads unless you're going to do a batch of cards. So in fact I've probably got a little bit even too much there. It's surprising how little you need actually. So once I've done that, I'm just going to add a tiniest drop of So Saffron ink. Now obviously you can mix any ink you like with this. You can use a mixture of inks if you wanted to, and you just need to mix it up really well, because can you see there's still dark streaks and white streaks in that. So I'm just literally like you are icing a cake almost. You just want to mix up the colour into the icing. So in this case we're obviously using it on our paste, and then once I've got a nice sort of overall colour that I'm quite happy with, then I can start using it. You can probably just see the shimmer in that now. So I don't want too much on my palette knife to start with, and all I'm going to do is to place my mask where I want it to actually be, and depending on which way you have this will depend on which way obviously your lines will go, because these will follow lines. So I'm going to do it about there, I think. And what I want to do in this particular occasion, I want to select a line of dots that I'm going to follow, and then I'm not going to go any further with those. So I'm going to move that over just slightly so that my dots fit nicely. So I'm going to pick up some of my paste. Now if you prefer, you can obviously hold this down with some tape or something. I'm going to choose my line that I want to follow, and I'm going to start off there so that I know not to go over that line. Okay, and then I'm going to start bringing this colour down further into the other dots. Now you want this to be quite a thin layer. You don't want it to be too thick, because one, it will take too long to dry, but secondly, you don't want it too thick for all the other bits that are going on top of it. So as I say, I'm just following a particular line. You don't have to, you can do them random if you want to, or if you want to sort of have a sort of part sort of covered piece at the end, that's absolutely fine as well, just whatever you want. As you can see, I've still mixed up too much paste. You could pop it into a little airtight pot, and I'm sure it would last for a little while. There we go. So I'm just finishing off across there. Just make sure all my dots are covered. Oops. Okay, so I'm quite happy now that all my dots are covered, going across my page. You just need to make sure they go into sort of all the sort of little edges, because sometimes they can, you think you've covered it and then you haven't quite, so just sort of beware of that, and especially on the ones on the edges where you're trying to be careful and then sometimes it doesn't cover. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that now, so I'm just going to lift that off very carefully. So there you can see my dots. I'm going to move that out of the way. Now I recommend that you clean up these things quite quickly, because obviously they're quite difficult to clean once you finish, if you don't clear them up straight away. So literally, you saw me there, I just ran my finger down that edge, and again just down this edge, just to remove any excess paste that has sort of got onto those edges. Okay, now that would take probably sort of 15-20 minutes to dry. If you can leave it a bit longer, I would. So I'm going to put that to one side to dry for now, and then I'm going to show you the flowers. So just clear my deck of any excess paste, and as I say, I would recommend that you clean your mask as quickly as you can, really, just to avoid it getting too stuck up. Okay, so I've cleared my mess now, so my background is drying off. Now what I want to do is to create my flowers. So as I explained at the beginning, we're going to be using the All Things Fabulous stamp set, and also the fabulous floral dies which coordinate with this. Now, as I say, I have pre-done all of my flowers so that just to save a little bit of time for the video purposes, but I'm going to show you quickly what colours are used and how they go together, because they are a little bit confusing. When you first open the actual stamps, they have little numbers and arrows on them to tell you which one goes with which. So for example, I've got this one says A3, B3 and C3, so they all go together. And then I've got an A4 here, and if I followed these ones, numbers are they C, so it'd be 1C, 2C, 3C and things like that, so you can follow them through, but it isn't really completely obvious, if I'm honest. So the best thing I found to follow the flowers was to actually use this picture on the front here. So you've got these three follow, these three follow, and these three follow. And then the others are quite obvious. It's just these ones. You just want to be sure you're using the right layers. And we're going to be using these three here and these three here. Okay. So I've just got some just normal Whisper White cardstock. And I'm going to start off with the big rose first of all. So if I pop in one of the roses so you can see what that looks like here. So this is quite difficult to get to the sort of shade that I wanted to create here, because things like Flirty Flamingo is very pinky, and Blushing Bride almost has a grey tone to it. Pretty Pink has sort of an orangey sort of tone to it. So I wanted to try and create something that was quite pinky, but a sort of dusty pink, and Rococo Rose is beautiful for that. So I'm using Rococo Rose, and I'm also using Merry Merlot, which is the colour I've used in the centre here. So you can start from what I call top to bottom, or you can start bottom to top. So this would be our base layer. This one would be our second one, and this one would be our top layer. So the top being the smallest section. Now, as I say, you can work either way that you want to. I personally prefer to start with my dark one first and work downwards. I find that's easier to line things up, but it's entirely up to you. But what you will need is a piece of scrap card. And you can see here when I was testing all my colours, this is what I just use as a scrap. So I'm going to start with the dark one. So as I say, I used Merry Merlot to start with. Try not to wobble the desk too much. And I stamped it off, okay, because it's quite dark on its own. I then stamped that onto my card. So that itself has a bit of a sort of dusty sort of pink colour to it, but it is quite different to obviously the original stamp of that. So that's all we need that Merry Merlot for. So the next one I'm going to use is Rococo Rose, as I say, and I've used this for the next two layers, and I've used it exactly the same. I've stamped it up, I've stamped it off, and then I've lined it up. Now there's a little sort of line here which I use to line these up, and also this sort of arm here. Now this is difficult on camera because obviously the camera is directly over the top, so I'm going to do my best to line this up. So there we go. So that's our first one, and then I'm using the large flower, and again I'm using Rococo Rose, just making sure I've got a nice lot of ink on there, stamping it off because I say it is quite dark on its own, and again I'm just lining this up over the top. Just making sure again that piece and this sort of arm of this petal here. Once you've done them 2 or 3 times, they're not too bad to line up. So that was how I created this flower here. You can see I obviously didn't have as much ink on this one, but I think it doesn't matter because it's tonal, so it really doesn't matter if it's not everyone's as deep as the one that I made originally. So that's to make the rose. So the next one I made was the little purple flower. So if I bring one of those in so you can see that as well. Now for this one, again, there's the 3 stamps. This one is slightly harder to line up. There are a couple of little pointers which I will point out to you. Probably from the stamp set, I think would be the best thing. So when I lined up the first one, I used this little piece here and also this arm of the petal here. So it's this piece, and this piece, and then starting off with the lower one, that arm, and that arm. So that one's not too bad. This one, however, is a little bit more difficult. Now there's a little sort of line here which I used partly to line up with, and you'll find that the edge of this petal follows in each one of these. So they were the two sort of areas that I kind of lined up for that one. So I used two colours again, and this time I used Highland Heather and Gorgeous Grape. So I'm going to start with Gorgeous Grape. So again, stamp this, and again, when you stamp it, it is quite dark, so I stamped it off so that it was a lighter colour. Again, that's the only reason I used that one, was just for the centre. The next one I'm going to use is Highland Heather. So as I say, I'm going to take this stamp, and I need to make sure that one, I have it up the right way, but I'm using this little line that sort of forms here, and then also the edge of this petal just here will run up alongside here. As I say, once you've done them once or twice, you kind of get to know where they go. So I'm going to line this up. I'm going to try my best, as I say, because it is difficult when you've got the camera above you. So I'm just going to make sure that that lines up with that side. Oh, that's not too bad. So that was Highland Heather. I'm going to use Highland Heather again on the large flower here. And again, I've got that little line, which it's difficult to see, I know, on here, but there is this little line here. And also you'll notice that once you go over the top, your the edge of this petal here will line up quite well. Oops, and I forgot to stamp off. See, it happens to all of us. So let me do that again. I'm going to start off with Gorgeous Grape, stamp off, stamp onto my paper, okay? I'm then going to start again with Highland Heather, stamp off, line it up, just line up that edge of that petal and that little line in the middle best I can. There we go. And then I'm going to do it again. So this is my flower on top. Now you can see why I've had to stamp off, because all the colours then sort of blur into each other. So we don't want that to happen. So again, I'm going to stamp off. I'm going to line up my little squiggle in the middle and the edge of that petal again and stamp over the top. So there you can see that's all nice and pretty and subtle now, as opposed to this sort of mess of colours really. So it takes a little bit of playing around with the colours just to sort of get the overall effect that you want, but I was quite happy once I'd kind of worked those back. So now that that's done, the only other thing that I stamped was the leaves, and for this I just stamped them purely from Granny Apple Green. So there was no stamping off or anything with that one, it was purely just stamping directly. Okay, so once I did that, I did 2 of the pink flowers, and I did 3 of the purple, and then I did actually do 4 of the leaves, but I ended up just using the 3, and they are here. Okay, so as I say, I've pre-prepared all mine because it was easier for me to do them and cut them out to save a little bit of time on the camera. So I'm going to bring my card back in, and as I say, this probably isn't quite dry yet. It's not far off it. I'm just going to have to be very, very careful. Normally I'd probably mount all my flowers first, but I want to give this the best chance to lay flat. So I'm going to pop this onto here. As I say, normally I'd probably layer all my flowers first, then I'd stamp my greeting, and then I'd mount it onto my card, but given that it's still damp, I'm a little bit reluctant to do too much. I'm going to wait to put that on my card though. Okay, so now we need to decide where all our flowers are going to go. So I tend to just sort of arrange them first on just a piece in front of me, just so I can see where I want to go. And so I don't want to cover too much of this lovely yellow that we've done here, but equally I want my flowers to look sort of quite sort of lifelike, really. So kind of popping these, some over the top, some under, and then I'm going to add some green just so I can get a rough feel of where I want to go with them. And I wanted these flowers to sort of follow that sort of line, if you like. Pop that one over the top as well. Yeah, so that's the sort of thing I'm looking for. I have another leaf here, which I think I'll probably just pop under there. So I'm quite happy with that. So what I'm going to do is remove these, try and remember where I put them, because that's always the other thing. And I'm going to stick the actual leaves down first. So I do tend to use tweezers when I'm doing this, just because I find it a little bit easier. So these were sort of lining my path for my flowers to go here. So I just want to grab some dimensionals, and I'm going to do a sort of a mixture of some on dimensionals, some on not. So my two large roses are going to be on dimensionals. So they're my next ones. Now I've got plenty of room all around those edges that I can sort of tuck the other flowers in if I want to. I'm just going to such a pretty little stamp set. As I say, it takes a bit of getting used to, but once you're used to it, it's really lovely to work with. Okay, so I'm going to pop a dimensional down on this section, on this petal here. That's sort of like the flatter petal, but I'm leaving this bare because that's going to be glued on top of my roses. So I'm just going to add a little bit of glue there. And I think I'm going to pop my other leaves under here. Just being careful in case my paste hasn't quite dried yet. So I think I had, yes, I'm going to go flat with that one. Just be careful when you've obviously got glue. You don't want to get it everywhere. And then I think maybe here or here. I think I need to come down here a little bit. So I'm going to go here, I think. It's funny, you can play around and rearrange things all the time. It's part of the fun. I'm actually going to tuck one petal underneath there, so it looks like they're sort of all connected together, really. Okay, so I'm quite happy with those on there. So the next thing I want to do is to add my greeting. Now, I wasn't sure sort of what colour to work with on this, because when you stamp off, you don't always get such a deep colour for greetings, like for words and things like that. So I'm going to try first of all Merry Merlot. I like my greetings to be quite bold, so I'm going to try with that. I'm just going to try it on a bit of scrap here first, because I think that will look really, really nice. Okay, and I'm just going to pop this up in this little gap here. That's beautiful. Okay, so that's my greeting. Now all I want to do is to pop it onto my card front, so I'm going to do that next. Okay, and then I'm just going to grab a few gems if I can find some. You always start off getting everything out and then things get moved around and you can't find anything. So I'm just going to add a few gems on here just to add a little bit more sparkle because we can. Yep, there we go. So, as I say, that's for my dear friend who's having just a bit of a rotten time of it at the moment. So I wanted just to let her know that I'm here for her. She knows that I am, but it's always nice to send something through the mail. We don't do that enough these days, do we? So I hope you like that. The other thing you could add on this, actually, thinking about it, is some Wink of Stella, because the Wink of Stella is so shimmery and beautiful that I think that would actually really lift some of those flowers. So I might do that before I send it, but it's just an idea. So I hope you like that anyway, and I'll see you next week for another Monday mashup. Take care. Bye.